Hello and welcome to the seventh class activity. So today we're going to talk about storage services, how to manage the hard drive specifically on the server. And we're not really going to do a lot, but we are going to do, but it's going to be more of an explanation of how to manage the disk and how to create redundancies just in case something goes wrong and things like that. So I'll show you how to access it and all of that wonderful stuff. Okay, anyway, so boot up the domain controller and let's begin. Let's log in. Okay, remember you can always pause the video if you're not catching up till you catch up with me. All right, let's log in. I love server 2022. Okay, so I was playing with it a little bit. So here's how, let's get started. So how do we access the hard drive and to manage it? Well, you need to go to the computer management. The computer management, you can get that by right-clicking on the start menu and go to computer management. Okay, and in there you click on the disk management. And here's your hard drive information and all the other drives that you have there. So what you see there is you see C drive. So that's really a logical representation of the hard drive. The new technology file system is what's saved on there. That's how this is the file system that saves the file. So I'll explain all of that in a few minutes. So here is the 50 gig hard drive that we did. Some of the information in there is just the NTFS. This is the guy that saves the data on the hard drive. So that's reserved. You don't play around with that. This is where you can put all your information. So we have a 49.39 gigabyte of space that we can put data on. So now let's do this. What we're going to do is let's take 1,000 megabit, 1 gigabyte out of this and use it for something else, for storing data. So you can do that. So by right-clicking on the C drive, go to shrink volume. And it's calculating, it's trying to figure out how much space can you have. By the way, just to let you know, what's the difference between the word volume and disk? A basic disk, really, you cannot expand it. You cannot, it's not scalable. So if you get a 50 gig hard drive, that's all you're going to get. And with a volume is what you could do is, let's say you have if you made it into a volume, which is really like software wise, if you put another 50 gig, you can go beyond the boundaries of the physical 50 gig. So you'll have 100 gigabyte. So the volume can be expanded, but it's more scalable. It's easier, dynamic. It's easier to work with. So that's just, terminologies. All right, so how much space do we want to shrink? Let's put 1,000 right here. Okay, so we want to shrink 1,000. So click on shrink. And there you go. We have a gigabyte, 1,000 megabyte that is unallocated. So what we're going to do is we just created another drive. And we're going to right click on this 1,000 and we're going to create a volume, a simple volume, just a space where we can save data. So right click on that 1,000 megabyte unallocated and create a simple volume. Click on next. The wizard comes up, of course. And how much do we want out of that one drive? Let's say 500 megs. Okay. 500 megs, I want it to be a volume. Okay. Okay, now let's look at the letter drives. In the old days, the letters A and B are typically given for floppy diskettes. So that's usually still reserved for floppy diskette. The letter C is for the hard drive. The letter D is typically reserved for the DVD. So the next available letter drive is E. You can choose anything you want. We'll just leave it at E. Okay? Mount in the following empty NTFS folder. Mounting it meaning activating it. We're not going to do that. We'll just leave it. We're going to give it the letter E. Click on next. All right, now let's take a look at the file system. Let me explain what these file systems are. The FAT, which is the file allocation table, well, all of these guys, the FAT, FAT32, NTFS, and the resilient file system, these guys are, when you format a drive, I mean setting it up so that data can be saved on it, that's what formatting means. The first thing you do is you erase all the data that's on the drive, and the second thing is you have to put a file system in there, one of those four guys, FAT, FAT32, NTFS, or the resilient file system. What do these guys do? Whenever you save and you download files or you install an applications, it's these file system that takes the files from you, the data from you, and they place it on the hard drive. And they remember where they placed it. Okay? So, and they keep track of it. So whenever you want to retrieve any of the data, you really communicate with the file system with one of those guys, and he retrieves them from you. So if these guys are don't know what got corrupted or there's a virus, you got a big problem because nobody will be able to retrieve the data that you have saved. FAT is old. It's 60. They have 16 bits for to get the addresses on the drive for the sectors where they save the data. FAT32, they have 32 bits, which can give you theoretically up to 4 gigabyte, 4 billion addresses. And each address can hold 64 kilobytes. So if you saved one file that is a kilobyte, 1 kilobyte file on a FAT32, because each allocation area in a FAT32 can hold 64 kilobytes, and you save one file in there that's only 1 kilobyte, you're going to lose 63 kilobytes, right? NTFS, the new technology file system, is the most efficient. The allocation table, the allocation space is only 8 kilobits. So if you saved the file, the same file that's 1 kilobyte on an NTFS, you're only losing 7 kilobytes. In comparison to the FAT32, you would lose 63. So it's better to use the NTFS because you're using your hard drive more efficiently. And also, the NTFS allows you to compress the files, allows you to encrypt the files, and it's more stable. The resilient file system, that's even better. It's an enhanced NTFS. It's made better for data protection and scalable. You can expand it a little bit more, and for corrupted data and so on. So it makes copies of the files and so on. So it's best to use a resilient file system if you can. But a lot of times the applications or the files that you have don't work with this new Microsoft Resilient file system. Most apps like to work with NTFS. Some old apps, by the way, only work with FAT32. So we'll leave it at NTFS, okay? So that's an explanation what these are. The allocation size is 8 kilobits, the default. You can increase it and decrease it if you want. We'll leave the default. The volume is, label it as new volume, or let's call it, I don't know, network operating system volume. All right. Perform a quick format. That means erase it very quickly. And we don't want to enable the compression folder. Take a picture of this and put it on the bottom of your class activity number 7. All right, when you're done, just click on next. And there is your the summary of what we have done. You click on finish, and there is your network operating system drive E. You can do whatever you want in it, by the way. All right, now let's look at this free space right here. And if you right click on it, just right click on it. I want to explain some of this, what you can do to a hard drive. So we're done with this. Let's say you put a hard drive in addition to your C drive. We're assuming that this 500 meg or 499 megabyte. But as soon as you put it in, you can come here to the disk management and choose it to be a new simple volume. Well, we know what that is, right? New simple volume, just like creating another volume where you can use it to save file. All right. And it does not, you can actually expand it in here. New span volume, that means simple volume means it's going to be a drive by itself. But if you choose new span volume, it will extend this. So you're adding 500 meg to the original drive. It spans over the boundaries of the physical hard drive that you have on your system. Okay, stripped, mirrored, and RAID 5, all of these are RAID disks. RAID stands, R-A-I-D, stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks. Disks or drives. Okay, stripped volume is RAID 0. RAID 0 is really designed for, or RAID 1, I should say. There's RAID 0, 1, yeah, RAID 0. RAID 0 is really, there is more redundancy, but what they do is if you have multiple drives, they take the data and they put them on multiple drives. They strip them, copy them on multiple drives. And so if one drive fails, you still have some of the other files. Not everything is gone, right? So that's not really redundancy, but the reason they use RAID 0 is for quick reading. So much faster when you are much faster read performance, right? But no redundancy for RAID 0. If you use a mirrored drive, which is very, very important, this is where you get redundancy. Let's say you have two drives. One data is saved on the primary and the other data, and the same data is copied on this drive, for example. And that will just stay there for backup. So in case the primary failed, the mirrored one that has the same exact copy will kick in immediately. All right, so that's RAID 1, the mirrored drive. The new RAID 5 is called, uses like 3 or 4 disks. It saves just like RAID 0, it saves the data on multiple disks, but also it's going to calculate what's called parity to find, it's like codes of all the data that's saved on all the drives, and they place them all over the drives. And what that does is you get the performance of RAID 0, reading data back very quickly, but if one drive fails, you'll be able to retrieve the data back from these codes that are saved on the multiple drives. So writing to RAID 5 takes a little bit longer, but you'll get the performance and the redundancy with it. So that's better, right? All right, so that's RAID 5. Take a picture of this while you're having this. I want to make sure that you have listened to what I had to say about the RAID drives. Put that on the bottom of your lap. Okay. All right. Now, let's say you don't want the 500 megs. You want to extend it back. You can click on it, and we're going to extend the volume. All right, let's click on next. So you want to extend the volume. Give me some more from this drive right here. So let's choose 250. You can remove, by the way, the whole thing if you want to. So you have about 498. Let's say 250. I want to, oh, not 150, 250. Click on next and click on finish. All right, so I took 200. You see what I mean by volume? So I can imagine that these two drives, I can steal more if I want, as much as I can. Simple volume. All right, so now we extended it. Shrinking it means making it making it smaller, of course. Take a picture of this and put it on the bottom of your lab, of your class activity. The last thing that I want to really look at is talk about this disk, basic disk 0, or sometimes you can, if you right click on it, you can convert it to dynamic. What is the difference between basic and dynamic drives? So if you want your drive to be basic, or do you want it to be dynamic? If you leave it, the default is a basic disk. The basic disk will have all the information of the disk partition is held with the operating system. All that information about the disk partition, how it's formatted and all that, the operating system that's running will hold it, like Windows Server or Windows 10 or whatever. If it's dynamic, this information is placed on the drive itself. So when it's saved on when it saves on the disk, and if you move it to another system, it may not be compatible with the other operating system. So let's say I want to take this drive. If it's basic, Windows has the information about how I save the information on the drive. I can take the drive and put it on a Linux machine, it's going to work because it's just basic. But if I make it dynamic and I remove the disk and I put it somewhere else, since the information is saved on the drive, other operating system may not be able to read the data that's on the drive. Usually we don't play around with this, just leave it as a basic disk. All right, there is no screenshots for that. And that's it. I just wanted to go through the explanation on how to manage drives. It is very important that you know how to set up RAID 1, the mirrored drive. You need redundancy on the server in case anything fails. All right, so shut down the server, and we're done with this exercise, and I will see you in class activity number 8.